Ian Horowitz, welcome to the REI Diamond Show. How you doing today?
Good, brother. I'm excited to be here, recording a little late in the day, but for good conversation, I'm here. Let's do it. So,
Nice. Yeah, our mutual friend Josh Hertz, we'll give him a shout out. He's the one that told me about Equity Horowitz, or Equity Warehouse. You know the guy Ian Horowitz? And I went and checked it out, and I've been a fan of your podcast now for I don't know, it must have been like 2.5 years or so. And it was really cool to see the booking request come in. All right, me and Ian can have a conversation now.
yeah, no, it's we were kind of talking about that beforehand when we did the pre-interview stuff that the podcast actually is a great way to like meet a lot of people, learn about what people are doing. It helps like refine your business. Me personally, even though I'm a outgoing, bubbly person, it's just sometimes it's weird to put your business out there. And I'm glad we've done it because we've run into a lot of cool people all across the United States and even Canada that are just crushing real estate in every imaginable way that you can think of. And I'm sure you've seen the same thing on yours.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like if I cold called you out of the blue, Ian, at, 5 p.m. Eastern on a Thursday, you're not taking my call.
Yeah. Well, if Josh set it up, I might take the call. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah. You're,
exactly.
you're
So
not really giving me the hour, and like you, and I'm sure you guests to come on your show, guests to come on my show. Like you got to get past the gatekeepers and everything. So the podcast is just such a great format. We prepare, we do some research on each other, so interesting conversation. For any of our listeners, Ian, who don't already know about you and Equity Warehouse, do you want to kind of give us the origination story, where you started, what you were doing, and then maybe a Reader's Digest of your summary in the career and what you're working on now?
yeah, we had very humble beginnings. Myself and my business partner, we grew up outside of Philadelphia and we wanted to be big city firemen. And at the time you had to live in Philadelphia, you had to live there your whole career. And we said, nope, not doing that. And we started taking tests all across the country. And me, my business partner, and a few other friends, we ended up in Baltimore City. If you ever watched The Wire, that's where we worked. If you watched all the riots that happened, that's where we worked. We were in the heart of it. And the interesting thing, though, is we got hired in '07 and '08. Well, why is that important? We all know what happens. The end of the world comes, the global financial crisis. And here we are taking government jobs in exchange for security, right? But then here we are being faced with furloughs, pensions issues, company closures. Detroit's going bankrupt. California pension systems are going bankrupt. Private industry are going bankrupt. And then I'm just sitting there going, like, what are we doing? Baltimore City's like a half a step above Detroit. Like, you're out of your mind if you think they're going to be in a better position. So I got nervous about that. And then you see the guys working there 30, 40 years. They worked there 30, 40 years. And it's like, hey, so what are you doing when you retire, Lieutenant? Oh, I'm gonna go work at Home Depot or Walmart. I'm like, well, that's just dumb. Like you work 30, 40 years and you're gonna go work at Walmart when you retire. And then, the wife wants to have kids. It was just a culmination of everything. The wife wants to have kids. You start to think about legacy and God forbid I get killed or incapacitated at work. Like, how do I survive? And I said, you know what? How do I make money if I'm asleep? Well, I'm at work, right? Because we work 24-hour shifts. And I just kept thinking, I'm like, someone's in my house renting it. I am making money every second of the day while they're there. God forbid something happens to me. My wife can hire a manager. She can sell the asset. She can do a multitude of things and take care of my family. Um, as long as these properties are in some sort of performing condition. And that's what led us down the path to real estate. And just to kind of summarize it, and I'm sure we'll go through more of the story, but we started in single family Section 8 housing. First house we ever bought was 25 grand. And today we have almost $70 million worth of real estate, including commercial assets. And the largest deal we've done to date is almost $13 million as a one-time acquisition. So it's been a heck of a run. So
Nice, nice. So you are a firefighter. Why was that the dream?
so we grew up. I'm I don't forget. I'm gonna quit myself. I'm 41, right? Yeah, I think I'm 41. So what happens right is I'm graduating high school 2001, right? And we were already volunteering locally, and I kind of had a little turbulent teenage, early 20s, And I was like, I just need stability in my life. The one thing I love doing is hanging out the firehouse. I love the brotherhood. I love the camaraderie. More importantly, I actually do like helping people, and I don't care who you voted for, what you dress up at night. None of that matters. We're here putting out a fire. By the way, in case you're wondering, it is the best adrenaline rush you can get without doing drugs. It is insanely fun, right? And I just kept going back to it. My dad had passed away. And I said, I just need a change of pace. Like, I got to get out of here. Let's go do it. And I thought that was going to be my career path. We grew up here outside of Philadelphia. you know, New York was like the end all be all. And like these guys were talking about working in Brooklyn and the Bronx and like all these like stories. And it's kind of childish when you really think about it, of like, it's really selfish running into a burning building and helping other people. But like, it's just like, oh, that's so cool. Just hearing these dudes' stories. And I don't know, man, it just made me tick. So
Yeah, I have a cousin, and I guess we were probably like 4, 5, 6 years old, maybe, and they had a fire. And originally we had three cousins, so he had an older brother and he had a younger brother. And if it wasn't for the firefighter that did climb up and pull him out of the burning smoke-filled house, he wouldn't have made it. Unfortunately, his two brothers did not make it. So I, kind of thank you and all firefighters for your service, even to be able to pull him out. And eventually he went on to fight fire too. And it was like, wow, it was logic. He's got pictures, him and the guy who pulled him out both in gear together, later on. It seemed like really a logical step. He's not anymore. He has kids. And like you said, maybe it is a little selfish to run into the burning building for the adrenaline rush when you've got the family, suddenly growing up, and now
yeah.
it's time to kind of do something. Let the young guys go back in there and do that thing.
Yeah, plus, looking at where we are today, police, first off, pre everything that's happened, you got to be a special kind of person to be a police officer. And like when they show up, it's like maybe not the best moment. People know when firemen show up, they don't care if you're doing drugs or doing something illicit. We're just here to put the fire out. Like, leave us alone. Everybody likes us. And I'm a very happy go lucky person. I don't like the confrontation. This video doesn't do it purpose, but I could never cut the weight, or audio. I could never cut the weight to join the military. So the fire department was just the right fit for me to be able to help and do something to give back to the community, not only at a volunteer level, but even when we got paid. I mean, people ask a lot. I know this is a real estate show, but I'll kind of go into it a little bit. Is like, we worked in some of the most economically depressed areas of Baltimore City. I mean, the worst of the worst. And just when someone calls and you can go help someone, and you don't have to think about, oh, you voted for so and so, or you're doing this, or you're doing drugs today, I don't want it. Like, there was none of that, man. You just went and did your job, and you actually felt good about it. Like, and
Hmm.
it didn't matter race. None of that stuff matters when you're in the streets and people are, and you're helping people. And that was the enjoyable part of the job. All the political crap that came around working for Baltimore City, that's another time, another conversation. But yeah, that was the stressful part. If you could keep your head out of the junk, greatest job in the world for barely making it out of high school. However, there was something inside that allowed us to grow and do something bigger than just being firemen. So
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Did I read right that you're also a private pilot? I guess you got your pilot's license and.
yeah, so as we quit the fire department, I was like, well, how am I going to challenge my brain? And we own a bunch of properties down in the Southeast United States, and this is during COVID. And if you guys haven't really figured it out real quick, me and masks like didn't really jive together. So I'm getting on plane. I got in a lot of trouble a lot of the times. And I was just like, dude, there's got to be a better way. And while we're independently wealthy, I've not figured out the private aviation game yet. And maybe that's a little bit of Jewish in me. And I'm just like, I can't do it. I can't spend the money. So you know what? I'm going to get my pilot's license, and I'm going to go down there, and I'm going to do it on my own. And plus, it's a cool adrenaline rush. It was really, dude, honestly, like, it was a real mental challenge, dude. It was 100% one of the hardest, like, because we came from government testing, right? Like, we had to recertify our EMT, we had to recertify everything we did. And those government tests are real simple. And as it should be, don't get me wrong, as it should be, that government private pilot's test was probably one of the hardest ones that I have ever taken And it was really fun. It's been really enjoyable experience. I don't fly as much as I thought I would because of the whole kids and family stuff all the time. But it is nice to know that I can just walk down the airport, go rent a plane, and be gone and get out there and you're in the sky. It's very freeing. It's kind of like golf. No cell phone, concentrating, just flying over the earth. People could be in complete turmoil on the earth and you're in the air just living your best life.
So I took one flying lesson, and that was the extent of my pilot's career. And if I remember correctly, it's a long time ago, so I might be like making it up, but I think it's probably a standard procedure in order to kind of like get me comfortable with how the plane and the wings and the air works. We turn the engine off in the air,
Yeah.
and you glide for a while. Was that part of the program for you?
Yeah, so they don't shut the engine off, but they did roll the power completely back to where it doesn't do anything. And even just rolling the power back, you're immediately going like spidey sense up, like what's going on? What happened? Why is there no power? And yeah, the first few times, like you're like gliding and you're like, this is just weird. And the instructor next to you's got thousands of hours and he's just, dude, chill. I'm like, nah, dude, like I just want to get on the ground. Like, what is gonna happen? Are we gonna die? And as you advance your career, there's like spin trainings and all these other things. I started doing my instrument rating, which is, I'm used to being in a smoke filled environment and crawling around and not being able to see. And you're like, oh, yeah, I got this. There's a seat under my butt. Like, I should be fine in the clouds. Yo, dude, that is a mad respect to the commercial pilots that are flying you around every day. When you get on that plane, you just make sure you nod and say thank you because it is a different experience. There's no spatial recognition, and you feel like you're flying straight and you're really 45 degrees the wrong way. It's again, it's interesting. It's a mind challenge. I think too many people are glued to this or they're glued to work. It was just a great way to go and fly for 2 hours and concentrate on something other than work, create a little bit of adrenaline in my life because I created that vacuum by quitting the fire department. And that first time you go up in the air by yourself is a wild, nerve wracking experience. So,
So when I hear you tell me the stories about fighting fire, and then now I quit doing the fire thing and I'm going to get the pilot's license, and you did it, right? You're like a doer and you're doing these kind of things. I'm like, oh, clearly. It's just so obvious that Ian would be like, all right, we're going to go take risks and buy $70 million worth of property. And I think to a lot of people listening, it's like, dude, I'm not going to fly and get my pilot's license, and I'm not running into a burning building. And maybe I'm even hesitant to buy anything more than a single family house. So I guess the question might be, um, I'm like in this place where we're doing some commercial deals and we don't have $70 million. We're not operating a bunch of product, but I own commercial property and I'm invested in quite a bit of commercial property, but I'm not the operator on the deal. And I think I'm probably at that place where we're doing tons of residential and it's great. We don't necessarily need to go beyond that. And commercial could be a little bit of a distraction at some level. If we did try to just jump ship, we have a really good thing going. But the bridge from residential to commercial is something I'm sure a lot of the listeners are familiar with, or the challenge or the dream. It's out there, it's on the horizon, it's on a pedestal. So my question in the lead in to kind of hand you back to Mike here, Ian, is how do you think your mindset, maybe toward risk or other skills and lessons that you learned fighting fire and flying, how did that translate into confidence to go pull the trigger on a $13 million deal?
yeah, man, that's a really good question, and I think it starts by, and it took several years for us to recognize the following: is we got really, really good at one thing. We got good at flipping and creating rental properties in the single family space, and we refined our process. And in that process, what we learned was we just kept going at it, right? Like we our value add proposition to our investors today still is we are willing to go and get dirty. Most people just want to throw money at the problem. And we don't leave until the fire's out, right? It was the same thing in the fire department. Like you cannot leave this scene until the fire is out, it's been cleaned out, and they've investigated it, and then you can turn it back over to the homeowner, right? Well, it's the same thing in our business. How many people, and I'm sure you've interviewed plenty of people, or you had people reach out to you to say, I don't understand what's wrong with my business. The problem is you're not willing to go out and get dirty and go do it. And for us, when it was like, okay, we did a bunch of single family houses, what's next? And it was a small 7-unit building. And I remember sitting there going, dude, we're talking about $400,000 on a 7-unit building. And me and Dan are just flipping out. We're like, oh, dude, I don't know about this. Oh, I don't know about that. And finally, I was like, dude, it's just 7 single family houses under one roof. Let's just work on that. And let's take it off the pedestal and let's just concentrate on this one deal. And there's only one way to eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. You can't eat the whole thing. So we went through the whole process and just navigated that and said, okay, well, if I continue to execute, put the property first, this will all work out. And we continue to grind and grind and grind. Too many people put this, like, you even just said it, of like, oh, well, I'm trying to get into commercial. Well, what do you mean you're trying to get in commercial? You're already in real estate. Like, there is no difference. You're not like, I want to say you, but most people aren't willing to put in that work or going back to day one, right? Day one, I bet you if you went back and looked at your first real estate deal, how scared were you? Everyone can think about that first deal. That was the same thing for us, our first commercial deal. We're going, I don't know what a survey is. I don't know what a phase one is. What do you mean I'm in control of all the title and every piece of this contract? Right. And it's like, okay, I just got to treat this like this was my first deal again. And what worked for all these years doing single family might not work here. Some of it will, but guess what? I got to recreate my whole process and work on myself to get to quote unquote the next level. And that's what it took. A lot of, and again, same thing with flying, same thing like the fire department. You just talked about it. Oh, roll the power back. Well, how are you going to get down? Well, dude, you can crash the plane or you can fly it to the ground. You choose. It's the same exact thing. Fly the plane to the ground. Fly your property to where it needs to go.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I wonder. So when, the commercial real estate pedestal, when you're putting your deal up there, where do we think that happens? Does that happen in, it's just his pipe dream and there's no real context, or does it happen like for you guys on that 7 unit deal? Did it happen when you first looked at the deal in an email, or did it happen when you were getting ready to submit the offer, or was the offer signed and you're getting ready to go to closing? Like, where was the moment of fear that you had to push past in that 7 unit deal?
Yeah, at that point in our careers, it was probably the $50,000 deposit on like a $400,000 deal. We're like, all right, this is like real. You know what I mean? And it was like going into it, the contract negotiation was standard, right? And I think where the pedestal comes from for a lot of people is the fact that um it's that it's so easy. If I said, Dan, what's uh what's this house at 123 Main Street in Drexel Hill, PA gonna be? And you're like, well, I grew up there. I know that market so quick. I don't even need to run comps. I know it's worth $200,000. I'll give you 70. I need to put 70 in all day, every day. It's a done deal, right? Well, here we are looking at a 7-unit apartment building, and we're going, well, we've never rented an apartment, so we know we can get 1250 for a single family house. By deductive reasoning, we said, well, we must be able to get $1,000 in rent, right? That's what all the other apartments are. We had to take that extra step to rerun rent comps. We had to take the extra step to rerun, well, what's it going to cost to renovate an apartment? I can tell you, we were at that time in our careers, we're spending $50 a foot all day, every day to gut renovate properties. We didn't know what it cost to turn an apartment building. We never even thought about porcelain spraying all the tile back to white, right? We only knew one thing was gutting it, right? And I think that's where that rub is. People aren't willing to get uncomfortable in doing something they don't know because they have this great comfort, right? They have 100 house portfolio and they're like, well, why would I go, can I curse on your show? Like, I don't want to
You're
fuck it all
good.
up, right? Like, well, we're from Philly. You already know what's coming.
Right.
I don't know why I asked for permission, but they don't want to go fuck it up, right? They got such a good thing going. Why would they go do this other thing when it's just so easy and they can sit back with their arms crossed, just going, yeah, just give me that house. Give me that house. Give me that house. Oh, I screwed that one. Whatever. The next one will work. Just give me that house, right? And I think that's where, I heard it really good at a mastermind one time. I was in a group full of some killers, and we were probably the smaller side of the people in the group. And the guy said, what it takes to go from 1 to 5 million in my business to then go to 5 to 10 million, then 10 to 100 million are completely different skill sets. And as I grow this company, I need to be willing to adapt with it. And most people aren't willing to adapt with it because they get so comfortable, excuse me, in life because they can go get dinner. They got every waking second to go spend with their kids. They're not willing to put in the work. They got the employee that, they're good enough, but I don't need to challenge them a little more for us to be able to do this next deal in this line. So hopefully that helps. I know it was a kind of a long-winded lot of answer there, but I really think it is that most people aren't willing to get uncomfortable with themselves to take it to the next level.
Yeah, and I think like, one thing we didn't touch on, but we assume is the decision's made that you want to go out and do commercial real estate. And why you want to do that, you have to decide if that's right for you. Because maybe someone has 70, 80 properties and they have 20% leverage on there and they're totally secure. And maybe they're a little up in age and they don't want to work that hard. Do they want to go to commercial real estate? Like, no, they want to have every waking second. That's the end of the story. Probably for guys like you and I, it's like maybe it's about the money, but maybe it's more about the challenge of the entire thing. It's like, you
So,
went to get your pilot's license to exercise your brain. I feel like I am doing commercial real estate deals and taking on more risk for, the challenge, the excitement, and even the impact that we're having with our investment activities.
well, and you hit it on the head. Yeah, sure, money is the ancillary byproduct to this whole thing, but it is a brain challenge for us as operators. It's more than just us, it's our employees, right? When I look at our employee group and the guy who runs our operation, Ryan, and I look at him and the success that he's created with his background, and he bought a house, he has 3 kids now, he's self-sufficient, his brother works with us as a project manager. Everybody in our company has come from some sort of challenge past, and now here they are with like successful careers. It's like, yeah, I can continue to create that in the single family space, but it's like maybe I can provide a little more in the commercial space for me anyway, because I look at it, there's more piece to the pie, right? I had the ability to say, hey, Ryan, we're buying these commercial assets. The investment share was $25,000 a piece. Guess what? I'm giving you a whole $25,000 share. You can't do that on a single family house. You can, but
Nah.
how many $1,000 increments are you going to give an employer? Five, and it's not real. It's not tactile. Ryan gets paid every month on that 25,000, and he has several shares in several different properties, and he's bought in with our company, and that's the impact. It's more, and to me, it's like it's almost selfish to sit there and say, "Well, I got mine. I'm comfortable." You know what I mean? But then you got all these guys relying on you. You got sure, I understand age, and at some point maybe we chill out a little bit, but you got all these guys and gals relying on you. You got the vendors relying on you, and that's not why you should do business. But you are creating true impact. I mean, my favorite book sitting right back here on my mess of a bookshelf, and it's Atlas Shrugged, right? It's
Nice.
about being a producer. It's about creating something, and everything that comes down in that almost like its own economy inside your business, that you're creating a lot for people by continuing to do deals. And it could just be single family or it could be commercial. In the end, as you execute, many people get rewarded by you continuing to grow and operate your business and not becoming stagnant.
Yeah, it's an interesting benefit you bring up where you're able to give a $25,000 share to a member of the organization. Because I recall looking at the docs on a deal and I think $500,000 in cash bought 2.5%, maybe 3.5% of the deal when you calculate it on the shares. And then in the general partner side, meaning the guys who were running the deal, one of the guys, I think he might have brought the deal to the table and he got 2.5% too. And I'm like, wow,
Yep.
$500,000. And you have the opportunity, like if somebody were to bring a deal to the table and maybe you go in, make the offer, close it, etc. Maybe they get a little cash up front, but maybe they get that $500,000 slice of the equity because it's a $20 million project, and you have options to be able to allow that type of participation where it's not like we had to write this check, but like that money's real. That money might be 6, 7, 3 years into the horizon before it produces maybe cash flow or even a windfall, but it's real money in the end.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people lose vision of that. And again, it goes back to, yo, it's super easy. I'll just continue to wholesale. I don't want to say it's easy, but you know what I mean? I'll just continue to wholesale houses. I got this system set up and it just does its thing. And it's like, well, at some point, like, don't you want to be able to give your employees equity? Like, my whole dream here at one day is to be able to say, this piece of every single deal goes to our employee retirement plan, and this deal performs. Therefore, our employees get rewarded on the back end, and we can we can only do X number of deals a year. And if we want to do more, guess what? You guys are getting monetized because you guys executed. For me, anyway, it was much more clear cut of how to do it in the commercial space versus saying, well, I'm doing a $120,000 house that's worth 150 grand that cash flows $300 to $500 a month. Like, yeah, Ryan, you're gonna get $10 of every single house that we own. Like, it's like, what an accounting nightmare. And it's like not worth your time. So for
Yeah.
us, that's what worked for us. But I would challenge everybody to say, well, look at your business. How can you monetize and get your employees to buy in with you to be towards a common goal? And not everybody's motivation is money, but it is a nice ancillary benefit to everything else that you're doing.
100%. So Ian and Dan have to write a $50,000 check on a $400,000 purchase, and they're having all this, challenging with stepping up to the plate. Let's fast forward to the $13 million acquisition, and let's go to the few moments in there where it was time to put, the chips on the table. Maybe it was the deposit needed to be paid. Maybe it was the underwriting and figuring out how to come up to $13 million in the first place. Walk me through the stepping up to the plate to kind of hit that pitch, if you will, on the $13 million project. The early acquisition chunk of it, if we could start there.
Yeah, so that one was a 3 property self-storage portfolio in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We had owned a few other storage properties. Um, we can talk about this in a minute, but like my favorite way to find deals is through brokers. I love building relationships with brokers. And he brought me this deal and said, look, dude, I'm not taking this to market. Seller doesn't want it at market. He just wants it sold. And I'm not really interested in dealing with anyone. I kind of like you. We've done a few other deals. Let's do this. I said, okay, game on. And I underwrote it. It took me a few hours to underwrite, back of the napkin. And I was like, yo, dude, I think there's a deal to be had here. I'm very interested. How do we do this? And I remember sitting down talking with Dan about it. And I kind of pre-negotiated with the broker. I said, hey, I think we're going to be right around here. And he's like, okay, yeah, if you can hit that 13 and change number or whatever it was, we could probably get something inked. And I remember sitting there talking to Dan, and he's like, dude, are you sure? I said, well, I don't know. And we had done other storage deals. It's almost like that 7 unit building coming from single family, and then like going to the next. It was like, oh man, like, and right before all this, we had a bunch of success on some other properties that we had syndicated, and we had a bunch of people just throwing money at us, like, hey man, we want to do deals, and we said, well, we think this is a good deal, and we actually got so scared that I hired a professional underwriter who teaches at Temple. And it was suggested to me that I speak to him. And I said, hey, Bob, I said, what do you think? And we paid him a couple grand to come in and help us underwrite it. And he believed that the cash flows were where roughly we said they were. And then I'm sitting there and go, God damn it. Like, why do we spend that money? But at the same sense, it's like, this is the biggest purchase to date, a $4.5 million cap raise, a massive loan. And we're just going, oh my God. Like, and it was a very interesting experience overall. But yeah, man, there was a lot of like, okay, well, we're doing this. There was a lot of, all right, like the numbers check out. Now what? All right, let's just continue to rely on our experiences. All right, we need to raise capital. We need to get the securities document. And it was like a lot all at once. And this kind of relates to the other question is, as you're challenging yourself with this, I can see very clearly in our business where we can insert people to help us grow this portfolio. And yeah, man, that was a challenging deal. I'm glad we did it. I mean, comfortably today, what I'll tell you, our deal wheelhouse is like probably 1 to 10 million is like a really wide range, but like 3 to 7 million is really where we like to be. 1 to 5, 3 to 7, somewhere in there. We'll go up for the big deals, but we like to stay in that wheelhouse. It's just the right equity raise. It's the right amount of work. It's the right type of seller. It's all the good things that come with it. And Yeah, man, it was a challenging. Oh, and the other big challenge to that deal was it was a FAR. You know, we're up in at that point we're still a fireman for the city of Baltimore. We're in Baltimore, Maryland, and this property's in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This was like one of the largest. Well, it was the largest acquisition we were making to date, and still is. And it was however many thousands of miles away, which made interesting for due diligence, vendors, employees, and everything else in between. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. And like sometimes, a $13 million deal can justify the plane rides, but if you could find enough deals in your own backyard, then the plane ride's kind of not desirable. The
Well,
how did that one work out?
yeah, so we're in the process. We've completed stabilization. It's getting ready to be listed at market. We've had some conversations with top 20 operators in the storage industry who are very interested in it. It's been a fun experience. You know, we'll see how it shakes down. I mean, just transparently, if we're in election year, so everything's down. That's my polite way of saying things. But everything's down due to election season. So there's a retraction in storage pricing, but it's really just retracting to pre-COVID days. COVID was this massive explosion of pricing and demand and people needing storage. And now that things have slowed down and people have gone back to work and they don't need to store things and money's getting a little tighter, they don't need to store things and they're selling their boats and their RVs. There's some retraction. So I'll be interested to see where pricing comes in. I think we'll still hit our target metrics of roughly 20 million bucks, but who knows? In the end, like as long as you're not losing money and you're de-risking your portfolio at any given time, a win is a win, you know. And if you didn't lose money, a push is a win. For those that like to bet in the casino, you know, a push is a win, and that's all you can ask for sometimes. But I believe we're going to make some money on the deal, and I don't want to jinx it, so that's why I'm trying to be very humble about it. And I'll come back on and tell you how it goes.
I like that. I like that. What was the capex on that one, Ian?
So we replaced all the doors. We went to an unmanned business model. We fixed some parking at one of the sites. We updated all the gates and updated all the cameras, updated signage and updated lighting. That's the one cool thing about storage over the residential space, the CapEx or in the industrial in general. CapEx, you're dealing with metal buildings. We're dealing with garage doors and paint and video cameras and security cameras and lighting, where in the residential space, we're keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like we got to gut renovate the apartments. We got to put in the coolest tile, the coolest cabinets, the coolest anything. And I don't care what class asset you are in. You know, you could be in Kensington, right? And people still want the best stuff there is, or the heart of West Baltimore. Dude, we were putting granite countertops and stainless steel appliances in Section 8 properties because we had to keep up, because at that point the inventory was all foreclosure stuff from the global financial crisis. So these people are in these crazy good houses. That was our market. Whereas in the industrial space, we're talking about white boxes, broom swept, keep it clean, and off we go, you know, and that's really the big difference. And that's why the CapEx on storage and industrial, and we enjoy that. But yeah, the CapEx was nothing too crazy.
Yeah, and to speak to your resetting back to the pre-COVID levels, our self-storage partnership had 14 sites in entitlement and approval. We're building 7 now, and we cut our square footage on those 7 in half. So where there was 80,000, it's 40,000. Where there was 100, there's 50. And right now, there's no plan to build any of the rest, and we're going to sell off the entitled lots for the other 7, more than likely. And it's kind of going to be a push situation. Make 50, 100 grand or something on each lot. That's not why we got into those deals for sure.
No, but
Uh,
if you can de-risk your portfolio, you know, I had a
100%.
lot of conversations with our investors, right? Because we're going to make money, but I'm like, hey man, I think we're going to hit our target, but we might not. And they're like, you know what? We're in Baton Rouge. You're one hurricane away from a massive mess on your hands. I was like, you're right. They're like, do you really know the path of progress down there? I'm like, well, I know the path of progress around Baltimore and Philadelphia. They're like, well, so why wouldn't you sell? We'll make money. A win's a win. We'll de-risk and we're happy to reinvest with you. You're doing the right thing, right? And I think that's part of it. That was like one major learning lesson from investing afar, is that like I could tell you everything that's going on within basically a 4-hour radius of Baltimore and Philadelphia. Baton Rouge, while I know the city well enough to get around from the airport to my sites and I can kind of get a gist of what's going on, I'm not there every day. I don't know where LSU's building. I don't know what's going on in the oil industry down there, and you could call me a little naive on some of that. And it's not that we're not good operators. It's just you can only know so much market data to an extent. And I'd rather work where we know, like, we have a little blue ocean out here in West Virginia that's about an hour from our office in Baltimore, that I'm like, okay, well, in an hour, I can be somewhere where there's massive development, there's massive growth. I don't have to get on a plane. I don't have to make my project managers miss their family and be away for 2 weeks and get everything done in one shot. They can work on this project on the daily and be comfortable and be in their bed every night with their wives. So that's one major learning lesson that we have from investing afar.
Yeah, tighten the radius, right?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's funny. Some of my friends, one has, I don't know, 350, $400 million in assets under management. The other guy has about 100, give or take. And both of them are saying the same thing that you are. The one guy owns some stuff, really far plane rides, but he's like, I'm like not going to keep going this route all across the country. I don't have to go to a billion or 2 billion just for the sake of the number. I need to like concentrate this into the 2, 3, 4 states where we own the most of our product for the same reasons that you're saying. The traffic patterns. What people are thinking. The government's political temperature, right? From talking to people that are like on the street and who live there and who are like agitated about certain things. And the other guy was getting ready to move to Florida. He's like, I need a warmer climate. I'm in Colorado now. And he got to Florida. We're like sitting on the beach in like St. Pete or something in the winter. He's like, yeah, this isn't going to work for me. I'm like a 4-hour plane ride from like 95% of my portfolio. Like I got to find somewhere in Phoenix. And that's where he landed.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And dude, it's vendors, like you said, political. I can tell you, Louisiana does stuff way different than Maryland. Some of these bluer, more progressive states actually have really, really, really good online stuff. To register your entities, Maryland's actually really easy to utilize, dude. Like some of these backwoods, like Mississippi, it's just like some of the shit you got to do. I'm just like, dude, like this is really challenging. And then you got to keep track of how every different jurisdiction operates and what licenses you need. It's a lot. Whereas I moved back to Maryland or PA, I know the ins and out. I can call the inspector and say, yo, dude, we need this. Or I know the permitting person, or I know the vendors. Hey, man, like I know you're down. Like plenty of times we've taken our guys from Baltimore and shipped them out to West Virginia and said, hey, go renovate this apartment building and it's done, right? Like asking them to go drive 13 hours to Louisiana, stay down there for 2 weeks. They would, but that's a big ask.
Yeah, big ask.
So,
Yeah, is Louisiana a non-disclosure state?
it is, I believe so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I believe so.
I think
Non-disclosure.
Mississippi is too. So like
Yep.
for anyone listening, if you go on Zillow and you look at houses in a non-disclosure state, they'll have a little line there instead of the recently sold telling you the price. And I know that they're not disclosing the purchase prices and that's not public information. I'm imagining and guessing that probably extends to some other areas of information too, right, Ian?
Well, the best part is taxes, right? So if you get if for some reason your title company, so in a non-disclosure state, the way I understand it is that you can disclose how much you paid for your property, and somehow the government knows, magically knows, even if you don't disclose how much you paid, and they try to reassess you. The good thing about non-disclosure states is you don't know what anybody else paid for their property, but you can look up their tax bill and you can say, well, I'm a storage facility and that guy's a storage facility and he's more competitive than I am because he doesn't have this massive tax bill. So I want to be reduced to that tax amount. You have much more leverage there than you do, say, in Maryland, where they're like, well, everything's based on the purchase price and here's the phase in and tough
Mm.
crap. So I will say Arkansas, for those that are looking for commercial real estate, they have a great phase in period on their tax reassessment, which is really cool. But everybody else is, these again, these are things that you need to understand. Another thing about Louisiana that we learned and Mississippi and some of these other places. We learned a lot about flood insurance, flood plains, and flood everything else. But yeah, man, there's a lot of quirks that people need to be aware of when operating outside of your home jurisdiction. So,
So you touched on 13 million, and that was a storage deal. And then you said your sweet spot was like the 3 million to 7 million. I'm
yep.
curious, is there a shift into a different asset class? Like what kind of assets now are you looking at if storage was balanced off? Like what's the buy box now?
Yeah, I mean, we tell everybody we're opportunistic investors. We're not shy. We'll look at a lot. Really, what we've been looking at recently is what do we love about storage? Well, it's not residential real estate. You're not dealing with that red tape of residential real estate, consumer laws. Everyone saw what happened in COVID. There's still flack coming from it, right? But what we loved about storage is you're dealing with a metal box. What we don't like about storage is there's a lot of move-ins and move-outs. There's a lot of transient people. Even in your nicest facilities, people are moving in and moving out. There's a lot of daily transactions that happen. What do we like about the residential world? We like the long-term leases. So we said, well, let's put two and two together. So we've been concentrating a lot on storage and industrial, more of the flex space, small bay flex, kind of like your storage facilities, 2 to 5,000 square foot bays for contractors. We're in contract to purchase one in Southampton. We're converting an old office building into flex space. That's a really interesting deal. We're working on some ground up development deals. Again, all in mostly in the flex space slash storage space, although we are doing a 10 house subdivision. And a lot of it comes and revolves around the ability to create cash flow by us being able to be our own GCs. Because again, our value add proposition to our investors is what that we're contractors. We have the ability to get the work complete at the best prices we know. And that's a piece of the project that we're able to monetize and feel good about it, right? A lot of people syndicate deals, monetize it to get all their fees to cover their overhead. And then they're just deal junkies trying to get to the next deal and continuing to monetize their fees. Whereas this way, we're monetizing a fee that we were going to pay to somebody else anyway, but we're going to execute as a contractor to do it. But yeah, the flex space and development is really what we've been concentrating a lot on as of recent.
So you're going to bring the 10 lot subdivision, you're going to bring those vertical?
Yeah, so that one there's a 10 house subdivision in West Virginia. We bought a single family house, subdivided the lot off, and we're going to build 10 new single family properties to be sold. Like I said, there's a major housing boom out in the Martinsburg region. We own some apartments out there. So we've been navigating. This was a good test on our development skills because as much construction as we've done, we've never come out of the ground. But we are in contract in something out in Bucks County, PA, that we're going to build 80,000 square feet of flex space. That's going to be a $8 million build with a $2 million acquisition. We're back at that $10 million number. But yeah, it's great opportunity to build and people are running away from development, and I understand why because of the demand. But in the same sense, if you again, these are two very small submarkets. We're talking about Martinsburg, West Virginia, where every major tract home builder cannot keep housing inventory in stock. And for the foreseeable future, we know that there's a new road from DC that takes people up into West Virginia. We know that Baltimore and everything else keeps pushing out west, and people want to continue to get more rural, and people are working from home. They're willing to live further and further and further, and people still need starter homes. So that's why we're real bullish on that because we understand that submarket so very well.
Have you gotten any offers on the paper lots before you put curbs in or anything like that?
It's funny. We just closed on the property today. We're still waiting for some entitlements from Martinsburg, and we literally tossed around the idea of just saying, "Screw it, just put it up and just see what happens as one whole package." And dude, you pick up 30 grand a lot for the little bit of work you done, right? The back end sale price is 350, 360. Yeah, I think we could get 30 grand a lot. It's like, well, you know what? Like, we could make $1 million tomorrow and take a ton of risk, or we could just make 300 grand and keep it moving. So we've debated about sticking it up on MLS and in that exact fashion.
Yeah, it makes sense. One of the strategies you might check out would be pulling all the permit data for the county and
Yeah.
then see who the builders are and reach out to them while it's off market. A lot of times we found that the builders like when it's off market and will like pay more. So I'm in another fund, and we're doing really large paper lot subdivisions, like 80, 100,
Right.
40 lots, and we're selling those to like Pulte and Toll Brothers and the rest. And the market is like kind of superheated. In other words, um, the developer, there's normally like, there's kind of like three people. There's like the land person who does the entitlements. And then there's one developer in the middle. That person would usually build the curbs and the sidewalks, and they're going to make a chunk of the profit too.
Hmm.
And they're going to sell each individual lot to the builder. So if we just use your 10 lot example there to kind of paint a picture, you're talking about 30 a lot. Let's say the developer buys it for 30 a lot and he spends 20 a lot doing the finishes. Now that's 50 grand he's in there for. Maybe he sells it for 65 or 70,000 per lot.
Yeah.
That would be his, 10 or 15% worth of profit. And then the builder has the contacts to bring them out of the ground. They're buying, hardwood floors by the container load from China. It's hard to compete with someone who specializes in that end, and they could build a lot cheaper. But the market's gotten so hot that we'll like exit to the person who's bringing them vertical, Toll Brothers, Pulte, even the local builders. And instead of them paying like 30, they're paying 35 or 40. So they're like paying, in a sense, you're getting the development profit too for being the holder of the entitled land. So
Yeah.
it's a unique hot market to get away with a deal like that right now.
Yeah, I feel like land's been real hot the past few years. I just know from my podcast, I've had several land flippers on, and I've heard the same thing that, everybody's hot and heavy on land and getting the entitlements and the subdivisions. And we know from the track home builders, they've like Ryan Homes, they've moved away from that business model of entitling and going vertical because they don't want the operational risk. There's a ton of operational risk in getting it entitled, but I agree. We know some people that have been doing a similar thing, and dude, they're willing to pay 2026, 2027 pricing in their mind, which is just insanity to me. But who knows? Maybe they know something we don't. I guess we can go to their private island
Yeah,
and learn
right, right.
something. So, but
So you're going to build what's that, $100 per square foot on the build for the $80,000 flex space, $100 a square foot.
yeah, we'll be about $100 a foot pro forma out. Again, obviously everything's subject to change, but we'll build $100 a foot with land acquisition costs and everything else. Will be 140-ish, I think. Don't quote me. And I think it'll be worth anywhere from 180 to 220 a foot because it's class A product, right? Like nobody's building the flex space product. And that's the interesting thing. So I'm actually really bullish on that one, more than I am the West Virginia subdivision because I believe every private equity firm from New York to Miami will be our butt to buy it because we're building just outside of Doylestown, in Bucks County, and it is such a high dollar, high household income. I believe we'll do really, really well, not only from a rent standpoint, but from a back end sale price, just because, again, serviceability, right? Like when you're looking at these properties and we're looking to build them, we're looking at, well, if we do build a flex space or a storage facility and you're going to run your business out of it, well, you can service New Jersey, Allentown, Lancaster, Philadelphia. Somebody could be on the road to 95 down to Maryland, right? Like these are all the things that we're starting to look at when it comes to development. That property was actually entitled. We're kind of like what you talked about. We prefer to be the back end guy and buy some of the entitled land, and not go through the complete entitlement process because that's specialized stuff. Those guys look at lots and they know exactly what they're doing. So
Yeah, it's a hassle to get the entitlements. I mean, that's like kind of our sweet spot in that fund. Um, and the challenges that are dealt with and the creativity. I mean, it's a whole business model. What do you think the rent per square foot there is on that Doylestown?
yeah, we'll be in the conservative pro forma, 13, $14 triple net range. I believe there's some comps that tell me we could be upwards of 16 to 17 bucks a foot. But again, it all kind of, it just depends where the market goes. Demand, the one thing that the demand is there's no product left. Businesses are moving out. The as people move out, the businesses come with them because the business owner doesn't want to drive all the way back to Philadelphia to his business. He wants to walk out to his truck, pick it up, then go drive to Philadelphia to go do the work, right? So, with that being said, I think we'll be somewhere in the 14 to 16 range. We underwrote, $13 a foot. And I'm excited to see where that one goes because the other thing, we're in such a high dollar neighborhood, and one thing that we've considered is looking at condos for, like, I don't know if you've seen them, like high-end RVers, high-end car guys. They're buying condos and they're breaking their like big stuff like this, breaking it down, putting condos in, and they got their own private car collector's suite. And when the guy that had entitled the property put a sign out there, he said he had a ton of car collectors reaching out and asking for that exact thing. So we're looking at several different exit strategies on that based on rent and potential condo sales.
So describe one of the units, like 3,000 square foot, garage door, bathroom, HVAC system in
Yep.
there. Or-
Yep, 2 to 5,000 square foot units. The max we could technically go is 12.5 based on fire code without having to put a fire break in it. And essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to go in there, we're going to build the box, and we're going to hang a heater in the garage bay with a garage door, high bay lighting, 24-foot sidewalls, and then we'll have a small 600 square foot office up front. Average bay size will be about 2,500 square feet, and that's it. That's
Bathroom in each unit or common bathroom?
Yeah,
Bathroom in
bathroom and office in each unit. Everything's individually metered. Because the other thing is we want to be able to go in there and say, well, maybe the condo market gets super hot and we want to condo this building apart and sell a bunch of them. We want it broken down individually and have no common areas shared in case we can get a sale. Because again, it comes back to de-risking. What if I could sell half the property for 10 million bucks and we own the other half free and clear? Well, that's a hell of a win, right? Like, so
Oh yeah.
we want to be set up again to have multiple exit strategies.
What's the clear height?
We'll be 24 foot.
Is that a 24-foot door?
No, we'll do 16-foot doors. Um, uh,
24
16,
foot to the
20,
rafters?
yeah, 24 foot to the rafters. It'll be clear span. And again, the reason we're doing this is because we can, right? The cost to go from a 16-foot sidewall with a 14-foot door to get our door a little bit bigger and to get the sidewalls 8 feet taller to have all that clear height, and the peak will be 30 foot. Dude, someone comes in with a racking business that needs to store a bunch of stuff and they're a local distributor. They can't come there, and your broker is set up for success at that point. They can't be like, oh, well, you should have, you told me you were going to build 24 foot. You didn't do it. And guess what? Everybody wants 24 foot because that's their out, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, man, for the extra $100,000 on an $8 million build, it's a no-brainer to go just that much higher. It's the same amount of sub-base work and soil work and everything else. It's just the steel's just a little bit more.
Yeah. And then what is that? Like 12 units, give or take? 10, 12,
For 80,000
maybe
square
20,
feet, no, we'll be
15?
like 30, 40 units.
Oh, that much. Okay.
Well, assuming everybody takes one bay, there's a one building that's set up as almost 12,000 square feet by itself. So that'll probably just end up going to one contractor. And there's a couple other bays that I'm sure someone will come in and say, hey, I want 5,000 square feet, or I want 3 bays. We'll negotiate a price, not have to build all 3 offices. And they want all the storage because they're a big landscaping company or a gym, granite company, a contractor that wants to store cabinets or something. You know what I mean? Like, a big thing that we've seen at one of our storage facilities in Baton Rouge, a lot of guys are keeping their trucks indoors. We have a RV
Mm.
facility, and on that RV facility is a lot of big bays, obviously. We get more contractors there storing their trucks indoors than we do RVers because the guys are sick and tired of getting robbed. They're sick and tired of the wear and tear on their trucks. They want to store the stuff inside. It's warm. The guys can work in the winter. So, um, I expect that, well, we'll have that many units, we won't have that many tenants.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sounds like an exciting project. We had a very similar project under contract maybe 6 months ago. Very small market. It was like 10, 20,000 people in a 5 mile. It was puny. And
Yeah.
that is not the Doylestown market. So your project and the product sounds far more exciting than the one we put the pin in. And I think our price per foot was right around 100. It might have been 115. It might have been 85. But we just weren't confident in our ability to get the rents on the way out with such a small population.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest thing. And I think that's the biggest challenge to development. All the market data tells you, oh, you'll get X, Y, and Z. But, again, you need to rely on the ability to understand that local submarket. You need the ability to say, okay, well, if my closest best rent comp is in North Wales because there's no inventory between here and there, well, is that actually transferable? Right. And I challenge, those are things that you got to challenge the broker on. And what's interesting about a lot of these suburb markets is you can be in the city from Doylestown on like a map radius, you're 20 miles away, 30 miles away, and people are looking at the comps, and you might pick up a city comp, and you're like, oh, well, that's not good. But really, you need to start excluding those things. And it's been interesting to see how the brokers underwrote it and comped it equally to what we underwrote and comped. And the commercial space market data is really, really tough to pierce. We have CoStar is probably the best tool that we utilize from a leasing standpoint, but that data is only as good as what people enter into the system. And
Yeah.
you really got to understand it. You need to have great relationships with brokers and really understand your submarkets.
That was the other thing we did on that one. Keene, New Hampshire. We had the drawings done and we marketed it and paid for the LoopNet Silver ads. So we would be getting the phone calls from the tenants. So, like on any large project with a lot of vacancy, we're running ads during due diligence. Like, we
Yep.
want to know, are we getting calls at $14 a foot or is it crickets? So if
Yep.
it's crickets, that's going to be a problem, especially if we're paying $1,000 a month to keep an ad running on LoopNet and we're getting nothing.
Yep.
If the phone's blowing up, now we're like, all right, cool. Maybe 14 is conservative and we are looking at that 15 or 16.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, no, understanding your demand is the big one. And I think this goes back to the earlier conversation. I think this is why people get scared of commercial real estate. You can't just go on Zillow and get your comp in 2 seconds and be able to wholesale a house or lease it up, right? Like, you actually got to put in a little bit of work to figure it out, and people aren't willing to do it. You got to pick up the phone. I mean, dude, I put myself out there. I'll call brokers and be like, "Hey, man, like, I'll be honest with you. I'm calling you because I need this information. I'm willing to talk shit with you, but like, in the end, I don't know if we're ever going to do a deal. I really just need this piece of information." And that's just the commercial world. It's just a little bit different, and it takes a little bit more work, a little bit more massaging. But once you dial it in and figure it out, I think there's a ton of money to be made in commercial real estate. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of money to be made in single family real estate, but I just believe the numbers are bigger. It's easier. Here's another one. It was easier for me to get that $10 million loan on that $13 million acquisition or this new build than it is $150,000 single family house in Baltimore with a proven track record. Right. So, um,
Yeah, Baltimore's a high risk area,
yeah,
huh?
it's all high risk.
Yeah, it
Habitation is
is.
all high risk, right? So, but yeah, man, it's just you know, a life insurance company will give us money tomorrow, right? And yeah, what do you want to do? Okay, you want to do this project over here? Yeah, that's a great project. We're in. Just pay us. We don't care what happens. Hey, local yokel bank, I want to borrow this money. Ooh, you're self-employed. No shit, I'm self-employed. Like, dude, this is what we do for a living. Yeah, but you know what? Forget it. I'm out of here. Let me just stay in the commercial world, do my thing. It's so easy to get loans over $1 million and keep it moving. So,
Yeah, I think some of that comes from look at the incentives on the other side of the table. $150,000 loan, like what are they? There's a point to go around. Like they're $1,500 to go around to pay the rent, to pay the underwriting team, to pay the guy you're talking to for the loan. If you take a $10 million project, you only probably got to put a half a point on there. And what's that like, 50 grand or something like that to go around?
10 million bucks, 10%'s a million, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, 50 grand, whatever. But even if they got a point on 10 million bucks, right? Because they're hovering a point, you know, and early on, I'm doing the math right now because now this is
Yeah,
buck
point a
rate.
point's 10 grand, I guess, right? Is it point?
Yeah, it's 50 grand. A half a point's 50 grand, right? So, because 5% is 500. Yeah, it's 50 grand is a half a point. But either way, they're doing. I remember early on when I was talking to the guy who brokers the life insurance money to me. He said, "Look, man, I'm taking a risk on you. The first deal you're doing with me is only 1.6." He's like, "Yeah, doesn't do it for me." I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Dude, I can do a $16 million loan, get paid way more money, and do the same amount of work and deal with all the same bullshit." I said, "Well, all right, fair." Um, but that dude there challenged us to make sure we're doing $10 million a year in loans with him. And he's a great resource. He's dealing with guys that are doing billions and billions and billions of dollars in real estate transactions. He finances over $1 billion in real estate transactions a year. I'm going to listen to what he has to say and say, you know what? All right, man. Thanks for the insight. And it's a great learning lesson. I think you can learn a lot from your lenders. Getting verification. Hey, man, we're looking at this project. Oh, yeah, so and so did a project over here, had great success. You should call him, right? Because it becomes more friendly. Like you get into that network and then you become one of the boys, and, people start chirping and talking to you. And that's where the real learning lessons come. And you really start to get comfortable in your craft and the ability to do stuff.
I love it. So, as we turn the corner to do the wrap up here, you mentioned Atlas Shrugged as your favorite book. That's an Ayn Rand. Am I saying that
And
right?
and right.
Ayn
Yep.
Rand?
Anne Rand, here she is. I don't know.
Ayn Rand. There you go.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah, that's a good one if anyone hasn't read that. Do you have one or two others that might be good for the listeners to check out?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. And actually, he's coming to speak at our mastermind. I'm really excited we were able to get him to come well, he's doing a Zoom call with us. But Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. I listened to that. And Dan Hardy has got that other one that's like Who Not How. It's kind of two similar books, almost side by side. Dude, those two books right there completely changed the trajectory. And this was within like the last year. I mean, just the ability to outsource. I really love the comment from Dan Martell. He's like, dude, like, or maybe it was Dan Hardy. It was one of the two. And he's just like, you don't concentrate on that every day. Like, you're not the best person to perform on it. Yeah, it might take that person 8 hours to make that flyer for your upcoming mastermind, but it'll be the coolest flyer ever. And I'm like, shit, you're right. Because that same 8 hours, I'll take 18 different phone calls, try to do two different podcasts, do everything else I got to do. And then I'm like, you know what? It's good enough. Just send it. Just send it. And I'm frustrated because I had to do it. And that whole who not how concept has gone a very long way in our business. And um you know you do have to make money to be able to employ other people, but in the same sense it is a very relieving thing to be able to push tasks off, podcast bookings, website stuff, just email management in general. Like, it's nice that I just get to go into my email inbox and I can just see what I need to see. And I think Dan Martell does a lot of good, actionable items in that book. And like I said, I suggest reading it side by side with Who Not How.
Love it. If you could go back and share the crown jewel of wisdom with yourself, let's say at the beginning of your firefighting career, knowing everything you know now, what would that be?
Trust your instinct. Go big or go quick. Really, instinctively, I knew that I wanted to do something like this, and I did it. And then I got caught in this exact like comfort level trap of like, yeah, I'll just keep doing single family. But I knew I wanted to do something bigger. I wish I took the leap of faith sooner. And that includes quitting my job because we tripled our business overnight. Um, Getting into commercial real estate sooner, asking for bank loans sooner, raising capital sooner. I just wish we did a lot of things. Or I'm sorry, I don't want to say I want to wish, but if I could tell myself, I would have said, go do all these things that you instinctively know sooner to execute on them. And you have the ability to do it.
Before I ask the final question, where can listeners get a little more about Ian Horowitz?
Yeah, we're Equity Warehouse on all the social sites. I'm the most active on Instagram, equitywarehouse.com. If you want to learn about how we co-invest and co-lend with our friends and family, we have a bunch of case studies on there. And currently I'm doing a $50 million acquisition challenge. Kind of told you guys about a bunch of deals we're doing. over at cre-syndicate.com. I'm giving everybody updates as we try to acquire $50 million of real estate by the end of the year. I started July 1st. I've only given myself 6 months. We're on the move. We'll see what happens.
Love it. Ian, what is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for you?
I saw this in the pre-interview and I've literally been thinking about it, and it's that's such a good question, because when you go back and Rolodex everything, and the only reason I'm filibustering and just talking like this is because I'm trying to think of the right one. But I am very much a when it comes to love language, I do enjoy the kind words. We just fished. I don't want to say it's the kindest thing, but I can just tell you something that I know I enjoy is when I get kind words. And I'll give you an example. We just fished the White Marlin Open. It's the big fishing tournament. We caught a winning fish,
Nice.
and one of the local owners, we got real friendly. We wound up talking about some stuff, and he gave us a handwritten card. I didn't care about the gift certificate. I didn't care about all the free stuff he gave us. That handwritten card was like the coolest thing, and it still sits on my desk. The wife leaves a little note in your lunch pail. I still bring my lunch to work, guys, and she leaves that little note in there. It just says, "Hey, I love you." It's like, oh, all right, that's cool. So with that being said, it's anything that revolves around words. I enjoy that. And sorry, that's such a bad answer to such a sick, like, awesome question. Not sick, but an ridiculously awesome question that I wish I had like the one, but I just know that's what makes me tick. So
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, maybe the takeaway for anyone listening, I try to make a habit of doing the handwritten note to people who don't even, who are never going to expect it. So, like, I'm in real estate. I know how to get people's home addresses, and they didn't give it to me. I don't ask for it. But the little handwritten note may show up in someone's mailbox, and it's just talking about, something I admire, something, and we may never do business from it. And then there's other people who we do business from it, and it may never get mentioned again. But I actually did have someone, mention, hey, I still have that card sitting in my car,
yep,
right? And I had another one. I wrote a handwritten note to someone in my family, and they passed away at a young age. And the family found the note in there with his special items and called me. And I'm like, I didn't even remember writing the note. And then when they like read off the note, I was like, wow, that's, crap. I was happy that I wrote that. And it was, he kept it. It was something special to him. It was like with his, you know, prized possessions, if you will. So you never know what the kind word in the right moment is going to do for somebody.
yeah, and you never know what kind of mood someone's in, where they're at when they get that note. They might be having their worst. We've seen it all the time. They might be having their worst day, and you sent them a little note that just said, "Hey, it goes a super long way, and it can change someone's whole day." So.
I love it. Ian, I've had a blast on the show. A couple pages of notes here myself. A really intriguing conversation. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Hell yeah, man. Anytime. And when we get this sold, hope I can come back, give you a little update on that storage portfolio. So,
That's right. Keep us posted.
all right, brother.